You ever get that feeling like you're holding on to something that's way heavier than it should be? Maybe it's an old expectation, a feeling that just won't let go, or even a version of yourself that doesn't quite fit anymore. There are times when your heart clings to what's already done its job, like letting it go would mean losing a piece of who you are. But if you look closer, you'll see that the very thing you're trying to keep still is what's actually asking to move. Attachment comes from that quiet fear that if you let go, something inside you will break. But truth is, what breaks isn't what's leaving. It's the strain of trying to control what was never meant to be controlled. Picture this. You're trying to hold water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers. Life works the same way. The harder you try to hold on, the quicker it finds a way to flow past you. And it's in that clash, between the need to keep and life's nature to change, that all the tension, anxiety, and invisible struggle are born. But what if the fight was never needed in the first place? What if what you're afraid of losing was never really yours? And what's truly yours could never be lost. In the Tao, everything breathes ease. Nothing has to force itself to exist. Water flows around rock not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. The wind moves through the leaves because it never tries to stay put. Bamboo stays strong not because it resists, but because it knows how to bend. These natural movements remind us of something we often forget. Life doesn't need to be gripped. It just needs to be followed. And when you follow, the weight lightens. When you watch, the inner knot starts to loosen. When you accept, the heart expands. As you read this, notice your own breath. The air comes in effortlessly, leaves effortlessly, returns without you needing to do a thing. That rhythm, simple, quiet, steady, shows that existence sustains itself. Maybe letting go starts right here, in remembering that you're not responsible for keeping anything still. Your only real job is to allow everything to find its natural place. And maybe right now, you can feel that you don't need to force anything away. The path of letting go doesn't ask for urgency, or grand gestures, or breaking points. It starts with an honest look at what's still holding your energy. It starts when you gently admit that you're tired of fighting waves that only want to follow their course. It starts when you realize that releasing isn't losing. It's allowing life to move the way it always has. From that soft openness, that first breeze brushing against the heart, we step into the wisdom of the Tao, where letting go stops being about giving up and becomes the most natural act of a soul ready to flow again. To let go, in the Taoist sense, doesn't mean cutting yourself off from the world or walking away from what you love. It means moving with life instead of trying to hold it still. The Tao Te Ching gently reminds us that everything is always in motion. The river is never the same river. The tree is never the same tree. And you're never the same person you were yesterday. In this endless flow, trying to freeze what was meant to move is like trying to trap the wind in your hands. You can try all you want, but the wind, by its very nature, was never meant to stay. Lao Tzu once said, "When I let go of who I am, I become what I might be." Simple words, but they hit deep, like quiet wisdom that doesn't need to shout to be understood. What he's really saying is that attachment isn't always love or loyalty. Sometimes it's just us clinging to a version of ourselves that doesn't fit anymore. We hang on to old roles, outdated expectations, or even fears so familiar they start to feel like part of our identity. But if you look closely, you'll notice that who you call me has never stayed the same. It's always shifting, expanding, finding new ways to exist. Nature, that silent, patient teacher, shows us this every single day. A flower doesn't force itself to bloom. A seed doesn't try to control the exact moment it sprouts. A cloud doesn't fight to hold its shape in the sky. Everything in nature works with change, not against it. And in that cooperation lies real wisdom. Nothing's ever truly lost when it transforms. It just keeps existing in a different form. Suffering starts when we try to stop that natural flow, like someone holding a door shut that's meant to open. When you really get this Taoist idea, you start to see that letting go doesn't come from pushing. It comes from understanding. It happens the moment you realize that what you're clinging to is already trying to shift, and that change isn't an enemy. It's an invitation. It's life reminding you that it doesn't end where you are right now. It stretches far beyond what you can see, waiting for you to make room for what's next. The Tao doesn't ask for dramatic sacrifices or fearless leaps. It just asks you to trust. Trust that what's real stays, even when you stop holding it. Trust that when something non-essential leaves, it doesn't leave a hole. It leaves space. Trust that every change has its own rhythm, guiding you toward a wider, freer version of yourself. Once you start seeing that life flows because it's meant to, you begin to understand that you're not here to fight the current. You're here to move with it. And it's right there, in that openness, that the first Taoist practice of letting go begins. Soft awareness, a gentle kind of noticing, the kind that watches without judging, accepts without tightening, and always finds its way back to center. From that place of calm, we move forward into the first step of practice, where learning to see lightly becomes the key to freeing what no longer needs to be held. The second Taoist practice of letting go is Wu Wei, the art of not forcing. Most of the time when we spot an attachment, our first instinct is to rip it out, replace it, or shove it away. But that reaction just makes the knot tighter, like pulling on tangled cords trying to fix them faster. The Tao teaches the opposite. It invites us to act only when action rises naturally, like movement born straight from the rhythm of life itself. Wu Wei doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing in perfect sync with the moment. Effort that feels effortless, like a river finding its way downstream. No struggle, no hesitation, no rush. Picture a stalk of bamboo in the wind. It doesn't fight to stay still or try to boss the breeze around. It just moves, bends, sways, then finds its way back. And through all that flexibility, it never loses its core strength. That's exactly what Wu Wei is about. A calm kind of strength, a mindful flexibility, a way of moving that comes without tension. When you try to force detachment, you only create resistance. But when you drop the need to control how things unfold, letting go happens naturally, in its own time. Just like water flows down a mountain because it doesn't waste energy trying to climb, you'll find your natural rhythm when you stop trying to make life move at a pace that isn't yours. To act in Wu Wei is to act without rigidity. It's letting what needs to leave find its own way out. It's allowing what's too tight to loosen without the violence of rushing. It's realizing that not everything needs your interference. In that sense, detachment isn't something you do. It's something that happens. It shows up the moment you stop pushing life where you want it to go and start walking alongside where it's already headed. And when you do that, you start noticing that a lot of what you thought you were carrying was really just the habit of holding on. There's a deep kind of freedom in only acting when the action feels true, not when it's driven by anxiety, but when it rises from clarity, not when it's fueled by fear, but when it comes from that quiet center inside you. Wu Wei is that space where doing and being walk together without any tension between them. When you stop forcing, life gets lighter. When you allow, things fall into rhythm. When you stop needing to fix everything right now, what needs to come together starts finding its own place. That's where the real nature of letting go reveals itself. It's not some dramatic break or painful separation. It's that moment when you realize you don't need to hold on anymore. Your hand just opens, your heart exhales, your mind goes still, and life keeps flowing, not because you're pushing it forward, but because you finally stopped blocking the current that was always there. This practice of Wu Wei sets you up to see detachment from a wider lens, because once you learn how to move without forcing, you start to notice the subtle dance between opposites inside you, the yin that softens, the yang that supports. And it's that quiet inner balance, that back and forth flow between the two, that leads you to the next step on the path. The third practice of letting go, on the path of the Tao, is about finding balance between yin and yang, that quiet dance of opposites that lives inside everything. A lot of the time, attachment is really just a sign of inner imbalance. Too much fear, too much wanting, too many expectations. The heart leans too far to one side, and what was meant to flow turns stiff. In the Tao, nothing stands on a single force. Life moves through contrast, like how day needs night to exist, how silence gives meaning to sound, how emptiness makes space for form. So letting go isn't about cutting something out. It's about letting the opposites find their rhythm again. Yin is softness, openness, the energy that receives. It's the act of loosening your grip, of letting things find their own way. Yin is like water, adapting to whatever shape it's given. It's like the moon, shining without asking for attention. It's rest, the kind that helps life reorganize itself. Yang, on the other hand, is strength, clarity, direction. It's what holds the line, what stays grounded in truth even when the winds shift. When attachment shows up, it's usually because there's too much yang, that urge to control, to hold, to define, to guarantee. But once that extra tension dissolves, yin finally gets room to breathe. Finding balance between yin and yang means realizing you don't have to swing between extremes. You don't need to micromanage everything, but you also don't have to abandon it all. Letting go isn't about not caring, or disconnecting, or going emotionally numb. It's that sweet spot where you can care without clinging, love without holding tight, walk beside someone or something without trying to own it. It's letting life be what it is while staying centered in who you are. Like a tree with deep roots and flexible branches, You learn to stand strong without getting hard. In that balance, you start to see that real freedom isn't about being totally empty. It's about being fully aligned with what truly matters. So often we hang on to things, people, expectations, old stories, because we mix up letting go with losing. But when yin and yang fall back into harmony, you realize nothing essential is ever lost. What falls away is just the excess, the fear that weighs you down, the control that suffocates you, the anxiety that keeps your path too narrow. What stays is what's real, what has roots, truth, and life of its own. When yin and yang are balanced, detachment just happens. It unfolds on its own, like twilight easing into night without a fight. You don't have to push anything out, you just let everything find its place. And as you do, your inner space expands, your mind quiets down, and your heart settles naturally between strength and softness. From that place of harmony, the path keeps unfolding. The deep understanding of opposites becomes the bridge to the natural closing of the cycle. A cycle that, like the river, always circles back to the beginning, only now with more clarity, more ease, and more presence. By the time you reach this point in the journey, letting go starts to show its truest nature. It's not some one-time action or dramatic goodbye, but a circular movement, a steady returning to center. Like a river that travels far yet never stops being a river. You move through phases, changes, losses, and renewals without ever losing your essence. The closing of this cycle isn't an ending, it's recognition. A quiet understanding that everything you tried to release was, in its own way, already trying to be released from you. What once felt like effort now just feels like a natural transition. Looking back, you realize attachment was never something solid. It was just a temporary state of mind. It only seemed rigid because you were holding on so tight. But as you walked through the practices of soft awareness, Wu Wei, and the balance of yin and yang, something inside you began to loosen. The tension lost its shape. The resistance lost its purpose. The flow returned. And what once felt impossible to let go of now just drifts along, like a leaf the river carries without a sound. The circle closes when you finally understand that nothing life gives you is meant to trap you. Even what hurts, even what weighs heavy, even what seems to go against your deepest wishes. All of it is quietly inviting you back into the flow. Suffering shows up only when we try to freeze that natural movement, when we hold on to a season that's ready to shift, when we stay where the heart no longer lives. But with new eyes, you see that every cycle that ends doesn't take anything from you. It gives something back. And this is the moment when the first metaphor comes full circle. That river that once felt heavy, struggling to flow around the rocks, now moves with ease. Not because the rocks disappeared, but because you stopped fighting them. Not because the path got easier, but because you learned to move with a different posture inside. The river doesn't force the obstacles out of its way. It simply flows around them. And when you start to move like the river, you realize life can work the same way. Steady in direction, light in motion. Letting go stops being a struggle and starts feeling like rest. A return to what's natural, simple, and already in rhythm. What once felt like emptiness now feels like space. What once looked like loss now feels like freedom. What once felt like an ending reveals itself as transformation. And you start to see, in a calm, quiet way, that you were never really out of sync with the Tao, just momentarily distracted from the greater flow that moves through everything. This circular closing isn't the end of the journey. It's a restart, only now with more clarity. You come back to where you began, but you're not the same anymore. Your breath is synced with life. Your heart is synced with the moment. And letting go stops being a concept and becomes something that just is. A more natural state of being. Now, as you reach the end of this inner path, something inside you might feel quieter. Not empty, but peacefully still. That kind of stillness that shows up when life finally finds its place. Letting go, which once seemed like such a tough thing to do, now feels like a homecoming. A return to what's light, what's real, what naturally breathes inside you. It's like, along the way, the hands that were clenched tight, holding on to what didn't need to be held, just started opening on their own. Not out of decision or willpower, but because the heart found enough space to expand. At this point, it's good to remember that letting go doesn't mean pulling away from the world or giving up on what you love. What it really asks for is presence. A kind of presence that's so aligned with the truth of the moment that you don't feel the need to control, predict, or cling. You realize you can love deeply without holding tight. You can care without owning. You can walk beside someone or something without trying to stop life's natural movement. That's the true spirit of the Tao. showing up fully in the world without getting lost in it. As you breathe right now, let the air in like it's an invitation to be light, to be whole, to be part of this bigger flow that's always carried you. Notice how every exhale is, in itself, a tiny act of letting go. You release the air without worrying it won't come back. That trust in the simplest cycle is a reminder that everything real always finds its way back, and everything that doesn't just makes room for what's next. May that awareness walk with you in the steps ahead. When life throws you into moments of anxiety or resistance, remember the water, the wind, the bamboo. Remember how the river teaches without saying a word, how life guides without ever forcing. When your heart tightens, remind yourself that letting go isn't about leaving. It's about syncing up with the natural rhythm of things. And when you feel something slipping out of your control, remember, control was never the point. Presence always was. So, as we close this cycle, I leave you with a soft blessing, like a breeze over still water. May your path be rooted like a tree and flexible like a leaf. May your days carry the calm of the moon and the clarity of the mountains. May your steps stay gentle, even on rough ground, and may your heart always know when to hold on and when to let go. May the Tao move with you, in every action, every breath, every quiet release that opens more room for life to flow. And if this message touched something in you, share it with someone who might need the reminder that letting go isn't loss, it's coming home. So take a breath, just breathe, and let the flow keep guiding your way.